And am I correct in understanding that 7-hydroxymetragenine is both naturally occurring in the plant and a human metabolite of metragenine?
Correct, yes. So we're not exactly certain that it is actually naturally occurring. It might actually occur, and that's just a hypothesis. It's not complete, we're not completely sure if it happens, if it actually is occurring as a byproduct of the drying process, if it is actually in the fresh leaf. If you just pick it and you chew it, as is done traditionally, and you get kind of this brief stimulant burst, if that is actually, if 7-hydroxy is still in there, or if it's just a byproduct of the drying process. And then it is definitely a human metabolite. So it's generated through CYP enzymes. And we think that it has to do with much of the opioid analgesic effects, but it might also be another yet not fully understood process that is another oxandole metabolite of mitragynine that might also contribute to some of the pharmacological effects of kratom.
Do you know what that other metabolite is?
It just came out. The publication just came out.
Pseudoindoxyl?
It's a pseudoindoxyl. It's mitragynine pseudoindoxyl metabolite that is generated through esterases in the blood. So it's not generated through CYP enzymes. But it's not yet fully confirmed if that is stronger acting than mitragynine or 7-hydroxymetragynine. We're not yet certain.
Right. And I think that the issue of prodrugs and active metabolites is one of the most complicated aspects of opioid pharmacology, because, there's a sort of, it's considered like a basic fact, at least in terms of what I've learned in pharmacology, that two drugs, all else equal, the drug that has the slower onset will have lower abuse potential than the one with the faster onset, and the one with the longer duration will have lower abuse potential than the one with the shorter duration. And so when you have a drug that has a primary active metabolite that seems like, in some sense, it's desirable because it's going to reduce the rapidity of the onset of the opioid action. And that is why I imagine why in many countries codeine can be sold over the counter, even though it's really just a morphine prodrug, and morphine is not over the counter anywhere on earth. And the same is true of tramadol, which wasn't even a controlled substance in the United States until, I don't know, 5 years ago or something like that, which is basically a prodrug for O-desmethyltramadol. But there's a lot of people, experts on opioids. There's a physician named David Yerlink. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's a kind of an interesting opioid pharmacologist and physician. And he's very much against prodrug opioids, because he thinks that you're then leaving the activation of the substance up to some genetically determined metabolic whim that could be completely different between users. Have you seen any evidence that people from different different parts of the world or different types of cytochrome enzymes metabolize metragenine differently?
So we haven't seen that in humans yet, but we have seen in rat studies, because we know the metabolic pathway of mitragynine, that CYP2D6 might actually be one of these candidates, because we know about genomic differences in that expression, that there are fast metabolizers, ultra rapid metabolizers, and also slow metabolizers of CYP2D6, that there are isoforms that might metabolize mitragynine differently. So that might lead itself to different effects that kratom can have. Now, we have to be aware, we're only talking about mitragynine at the moment. And mitragynine might be the most abundant alkaloid, but there's obviously more to kratom than just mitragynine. And it seems to be very clear that the overall effects that a user is experiencing from Kratom are not solely attributable to just this one molecule, to just this one substance. And I think the focus has been so much on mitragynine that we might be sometimes losing a little bit sight of, there's much more to kratom than just the mitragynine. And I understand that because mitragynine is abundant, is the most abundant alkaloid, that this is where the research is at the moment. But I think the overall picture of kratom should not get entirely lost in this mix.